Previously, on ComicsGate, I described my experiences as a female creator in a feminist-controlled market landscape. I was a female comics creator that was blacklisted for questioning feminism. These are all my unsold boxes of Xenospora. All told, over $10,000 worth of investment. Mark Waid publicly defended the Expo's actions and the Mary Sue's actions, and he called me a lying bully. As if on cue, the Washington Post has published an article by Noah Bertlatsky entitled, "The ComicsGate movement isn't defending free speech, it's suppressing it." Let's have a read. Let's have a read. As with Gamergate, the voices they, ComicsGate, seek to silence are often those of women and minorities. Let's see what examples they give, because you know that when they write this, they're going to go for their most extreme, poignant examples of the suffering of female comics creators due to the presence, the miasma of evil that is ComicsGate. So this is the worst of it. They're presenting the worst of it in their cavalcade of horrors that ComicsGate has created for female creators. In 2016, the comics writer Chelsea Kane found herself drowning in abusive tweets. She'd made the mistake of penning an issue of Marvel's Mockingbird, series that featured an image of its heroine wearing a shirt saying, "Ask me about my feminist agenda." Apparently you aren't really supposed to ask her about her feminist agenda. In the words in which one representative attack put it, she was ruining my favorite character with your feminist crap. As many others have in similar circumstances, Kane temporarily deleted her account. Drowning in abusive tweets. Chelsea got 7 tweets. All of them opinions. 2 of them could be considered... One was a really cringy come on, and the other was a joke about her looking like a false accuser. So, get her consent in writing first, boys. And the rest were just opinions on whether or not she had the life experience to write, the chops to write, whether or not what she was writing was any good, which, incidentally, I did a video on the Mockingbird. Chelsea is writing on Mockingbird, and it stinks. Oh, sorry, I just engaged in harassment. And she didn't delete her account over this. Kane's experience was one of the most important precursors of ComicsGate, the latest in a series of reactionary movements and harassment campaigns centered on nerd fandoms. Dun dun dun! Like Gamergate in games and the sad puppies in literary science fiction, ComicsGate claims to be fighting against censorship and the politicized groupthink of leftist social justice warriors, SJWs, anti-racist feminists, and marginalized people with whom the right characterizes as oppressors. Once again, I got kicked out of a comics convention and banned from all of the conventions that company ran, and blacklisted in the industry and lied about by feminist media, the Mary Sue, just because I didn't agree with a feminist at a convention. That's feeling an awfully lot like an agenda. And it's feeling an awfully lot like an oppression and censorship. But again, like those other movements, ComicsGate participants in fact work to silence opinions they dislike and voices they deem malignant. With 7 tweets. With 7 salty tweets. The left is often accused of intolerance and antipathy to the First Amendment. The most serious new threat to free speech, however, is the use of free speech as a cover for ongoing online harassment on the enemies of the right. 7 tweets. 7. The hashtag ComicsGate started in June 2017. A group of female Marvel employees posted a group selfie in which they were celebrating the legacy of recently deceased comics publisher Flo Steinberg, one of Marvel's earliest employees who helped the company's unique approach to fan outrage. I think you're missing an adverb. Helped what? Just helped the company's unique approach? Whatever. Ironically, goop is actually pretty accurate. A group of comics fans online were enraged at the evidence that women worked for Marvel. They condemned the women as fake geek girls, presumably in opposition to real geek girls, which would suggest that it's not the fact that these women are women, but the fact of a behavior they're engaging in. And that behavior would be pretending to be something they are not. And the creepiest collection of stereotypical SJWs anyone could possibly imagine, as in the words of one enraged tweeter. Another suggested that the women in the picture looked at like the false rape charge type. Among those joining in the attacks was Richard C. Meyer, who uses the ironic Twitter and YouTube handle Diversity in Comics. Meyer became a ringleader of ComicsGate, which rallied around the argument that female, person of color, and LGBT characters and creators were ruining comics and pushing out the views and voices of authentic fans. Blacklisted for questioning feminism. DC writer Magdalene Visaggio, a trans woman, was a special target. Meyer misgendered her and claimed she was mentally ill in a private video in 2017 obtained by the Daily Beast. Meyer railed against one female Marvel editor using gendered slurs. Not like mansplaining and man breathing and man existing, but real gendered slurs like slut and bitch and cunt, and attacked others for supposedly engaging sexual favors for career advancement. So in other words, he's not attacking all women, he's just attacking some women for a particular kind of behavior. If that is sexism, then I don't think there is any part of feminism that isn't sexist. It's not reverse sexism, just sexist. ComicsGator. Wait, I'm missing a fucking sentence. More recently, ComicsGate proponents have been arguing that celebrated poet and playwright Eve Ewing, that's probably one of my best mispronunciations, who will be writing the new Ironheart series at Marvel, is unqualified or undeserving. You know what? I don't give a shit about Marvel anymore. It's like, 2 years ago I told people just stop giving them money, give it to independents. It's like it's just going to go downhill from here. So I don't even know. I haven't looked at it, but unqualified or undeserving. Once again, these are legitimate criticisms for a creator. And how is it that all of the women that are being criticized by ComicGate are all coming from the same ideological slant? Maybe that's what they're criticizing. Maybe it's not the fact they're women. Maybe it's the fact that they're producing shit, ideological shit, that puts whatever message they want to drill into your head over the actual quality of the story. Like a chick track. Nobody actually wants to spend money on a chick track. Or maybe there are people who do. But most people don't. That's why they're for free. You want to create chick tracks? Don't charge for them. Do as much feminist advocacy and social justice warrior advocacy as you want. You want to hit people over the head with your moral bludgeon? Go ahead. But do what he has to do. Give them out for free, because no one's going to pay for that. ComicsGaters and their sympathizers generally frame these attacks on industry professionals as a brave, contrarian fight against stifling conformity. An important forerunner of ComicsGate was a controversy over art by Frank Cho and Milo Manara, which showed comics characters in hypersexualized poses. I remember that controversy. Oh, yes. You mean in exactly same... He showed Spider-Woman in exactly the same pose that Spider-Man had once been in. He and Manara responded to criticism by drawing a series of other controversial sketches, at least one featuring an underage character in the name of free speech and baiting feminists. Cho later claimed he was censored when writer Greg Rucka asked editorial? Okay, fuck, that's not me. This is the writing. This writing is shit. Oh, I guess I just harassed the author. When writer Greg Rucka asked editorial to remove him as Wonder Woman cover artist because of his sexualized drawings. The idea that people are being censored because they face criticism, or because in work-for-hire settings their bosses or collaborators aren't happy with their work, doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, Chelsea Kane just faced the drowning in 7 tweets of criticism. And her fans, or the fans of this Mockingbird, aren't happy. So why are you calling that sense? But it's a staple claim of right-wing nerd harassment, and it's used to justify extreme claims about left-wing totalitarianism. Blacklisted questioning feminism. At the risk of belaboring this point, I was a female comics creator who was kicked out of a convention, banned from every convention that company ran, and blacklisted from the comics industry because I disagreed with a feminist. It's beginning to feel a little fucking totalitarian. The X-Men artist, John Malin, compared progressives to Hitler. X-Men are closer to Jews in social justice warrior Hitler Germany's fight for freedom because they see ideologues rising, silencing them, weaponizing hate, racism, and socialism, he wrote January 21st. Similarly, when Malin and Richard Meyer's comic Jawbreakers was dropped by its distributor, Antarctic Press, the far-right conservative outlet The Federalist went all in on the censorship narrative. Many creators and fans urged Arctic Press to drop Jawbreakers because of Meyer's history of harassment and abuse. The Federalist, however, said Meyer was being silenced because of his brave conservative stances. The industry stood firm against conservative creators because they are outspoken against the extreme politics in comics, as the left is wont to do, mischaracterize them in an effort to delegitimize their product. Attacking women for daring to post selfies while celebrating a deceased colleague is apparently important conservative political speech. Fucking hell. Do you not see a difference here? Attacking someone's ability to eat is different than sending a couple of salty tweets at a selfie. Like, are these women now destitute on the street? Are they without work? Have they lost contracts? No. They receive some criticism of themselves as people. Not even very, very mean criticism. Because, yeah, I guess it is a little bit painful to be called creepy, but is that going to destroy their lives? Is it going to stop them from continuing to work? No. So you're comparing a person just getting a mild criticism, like you're a mansplainer, with a person not even being able to work. And you're saying that being called a mansplainer destroys that person. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong gendered insult. Being called a creep. Well, that's not really gendered either. Being called... I don't even see any freaking gendered insults here. Being called a fake nerd girl. That's going to prevent them from ever doing anything in their lives? It's like, you just put that up there and it's like, oh, well, I might as well fall over and die. I'm a woman called a fake geek girl. And you guys think that we have the contemptuous attitude towards women. You apparently think that a mean tweet is equivalent. When a mean tweet is sent to a woman, that's the equivalent of blacklisting a man from an entire industry. Because, of course, the moment she sees the tweet, the moment it unfurls before her, the horror, and it goes into her eyes, she says, I can never work in comics again. I can never do it. The pain, the post-traumatic stress syndrome, it's just too great. I'm forced out by one tweet, or seven. Because that's the same, right? Like I said in my original video last week, you make women lesser when you say they are victims of things you would never consider men to be victims of. And then you make them lesser by comparing their victimhood, like comparing getting a mean tweet to being blacklisted in an industry. You make that even lesser. And then you go even further, because let's compare apples to apples. Let's compare Chelsea's 7 mean tweets to me getting my ass kicked out of a convention, banned, and then blacklisted in an industry. And because I'm on the wrong politics, I'm on the wrong political side, of course, Chelsea's mean tweets is far more painful than a slut experiencing what she deserves. Oh, sorry. Did I make the dynamic really clear? Chelsea is your virginal goddess. It's your Madonna. I'm a fucking slut because I got the patriarchal penis in my brain. Internalized misogyny or whatever the fuck you call it. It essentially means slut. Sluts get what they deserve, right? They don't feel pain. All right. Reactionaries claim that the left is preventing them from saying all the sexual, important, insightful things they want to say. But right-wing nerd harassment campaigns themselves are aimed at policing and shutting down certain speech and certain speakers. Daryl Ao, an indie comic creator and critic, told me that one instance in which ComicsGate targeted him for speaking out. Ao had criticized Malin's claim that social justice warriors were Nazis. That night after midnight, popular comics penciler, outspoken right-winger, and ComicsGate leader Ethan Van Sciver challenged him to appear on his podcast to debate Malin. "Daryl, come on my show right now and say what you have to say," Van Sciver tweeted. Ao didn't know Van Sciver and refused the offer. Van Sciver continued to demand that he appear on the show. Dun dun dun. For anyone who uses Twitter, the result was predictably months of insult and harassment. The day before he spoke, 8 months after the original confrontation, someone had posted multiple messages on Ao's Facebook page to denigrate his art, referencing his conflict with Van Sciver. Well, God knows, denigrating your art and referencing is that a conflict? Like, he just said, come on my stream and hash it out. How's that a conflict? Your conflict was with Malin, not Van Sciver. God, the logic of these people. Ao didn't know. Okay, I already did that one. Van Sciver framed himself as a proponent of debate and healthy exchange of ideas. But in fact, he was demanding that Ao deferentially follow his orders in the middle of the night or be labeled as unreasonable and a justified target for abuse. Really? So Van Sciver is responsible for the behavior, Ethan is responsible for the behavior of his fans? No, he's not. And even so, it sounds like his fans were just pissed that Ao is willing to talk the talk but not walk the walk. He's willing to cast aspersions at someone but not actually talk to them. A free speech frame became a way to go after someone for saying things Van Sciver didn't like, and for putting others on notice that their tweets or comments could make them the next target. You talk shit and people will talk it back to you. That's how the world works. Unless you want to be part of like some untouchable upper moral, well, of course you do, upper moral caste standing above everyone else and they just have to listen to your pronouncements. And that's exactly what they want. Van Sciver wasn't able to orchestrate enough abuse to force Ao offline, but other reactionary and nerd campaigns have had greater success in terrorizing their targets. Blacklisted. Gamergate, motivated like ComicsGate by anger at the existence of women in... There is only one side to this conflict that can genuinely say they got a woman out of geek and gamer spaces, and it's the side penning this article. Blacklisted, banned from comic conventions for questioning feminism. Sent so many death threats to feminist games critic Anita Sarkeesian that she was forced to flee her home. I thought that was Brianna Wu's story. Or Zoe Quinn's. This sort of harassment was not an isolated incident. Jesus Christ, guy, you are not concise. Mio Yiannopoulos, blah, blah, blah. Most of ComicGate's targets have been lower profile than Jones or Tran. But that doesn't mean the harassers have been ineffective. Meyer, Van Sciver, and their followers have made it clear that black critics who question their friends or female Marvel employees who post selfies online will be bullied and attacked. Their goal has been to make comics less welcoming to people who aren't white and male, and they've succeeded in their goal. The right wing in our era has wrapped itself in the mantle of the free First Amendment. Even fascists claim to march in the name of free speech. But ComicsGate and other geek culture reactionary campaigns show that this is a lie. When you set yourself against diversity, you also set yourself against diverse voices.
Banned from comic convention for questioning feminism.
The effort to keep certain people out of comics or games or geek culture is also an effort to silence certain perspectives and to prevent certain people from speaking. Free speech for certain people isn't free speech at all. Free speech for certain people isn't free speech at all. That's a funny thing coming from your side. Your side literally got a woman deplatformed.
For questioning feminism.
Or what is this article? What is the aim? What do you want from life, Noah Berlatsky? Do you want these people off Twitter? Of course you do. Do you want them silenced? Do you want them incapable of saying a mean word to feminist comics creators? Is that it? And you want to cast everyone who gets pissed at a creator who's feminist as a misogynist if they criticize some choice, some thing that they've done in their work. Once again, kicked out of a comic convention, banned for life, blacklisted from the industry, lied about because I disagreed with a feminist. I think they've successfully made the stakes of being female or black or queer or trans comics creator feel a lot higher. Through mean tweets, eh? Said Jay Didden, a comics writer, editor, and critic. ComicsGate put marginalized creators and fans on notice that some people in comics don't want them there and would come after them. Well, I was certainly put on notice about that. It's impossible to know how many people that discouraged, but there's little doubt that the intent was to discourage. I obviously can't look at numbers and say, well, this many people would have been here making comics if it weren't for ComicsGate, Eden said, but I absolutely believe it has an effect. Well, you have a big fat 0 in your column in terms of how many women or minorities aren't here because of ComicsGate. But in ComicsGate column, looking at your behavior, you got a 2. You kicked me out and you kicked Brian out. And Brian is Hispanic. Part of the reason the effect may be hard to measure is that there is also people working despite ComicsGate's best effort to make comics more welcoming. Many comics pros have also recently begun to speak out against ComicsGate, which may help to reduce the movement's influence. Comics may yet become more open to different viewpoints.
Blacklisted, banned for questioning feminism.
Viewpoints, different experiences, and different creators. Really? You're basically ordaining that there be only one viewpoint. And you kick everyone out who doesn't agree with you. You know, there are people who agree that stories should be told about groups who are not white men. All right? My own comic, most of the characters, in fact, I think almost all of them are not white men, straight cis white men, okay? I don't have a problem with telling those stories. I think those are stories that need to be told, should be told, should be explored. What we're against is shitty writing. And not being able to say that it's shitty writing because you're hiding in your little moral tower that puts you above us. You don't have to do anything for your audience. You don't actually have to respect your audience because you're way above them. You're dictating their morality to them. And if they don't like that, then they're bad people. That is fascist. It's the behavior of religious authoritarians. You're not more moral than us. Because you believe in some really black and white and extremely ideas that create conflict. And not just that, reducing women and minorities down to victims lessens them. They aren't points in your game of virtue signaling. Teaching groups of people to regard themselves solely as victims of the world around them, rather than active participants in the world. Teaching people that creates poverty of being. You're actually harming women and minorities when you do this. You're harming them. You're not just directly harming them, like me and Brian, by kicking us out of a convention and blacklisting us. You're also indirectly harming the people you supposedly advocate for by stealing their sense of self and their pride. You make them lesser. And this is the worst you got, right? Mean tweets. That's the worst you got. That's the worst that ComicsGate has ever done to anyone. Mean tweets. That's pathetic. Look at the social justice warriors and the feminist men tearing it up on Twitter, or even in the Washington Post, writing op-eds about how ComicsGate is all about evicting women out of the comics industry. Think about that. This is what Mark Waid and Joe Quesadilla, I don't give a shit, I'm not going to look up his name and how to spell it or pronounce it. Look at what they're doing and saying about ComicsGate, about how ComicsGate is trying to get women out of comics, women and minorities out of comics. Seriously. And then look at my story. My story bears their lies for everyone to see. That's what it does. It shows their hypocrisy. It shows the fact that that side of this argument, this debate, this conflict will do anything and everything to women and to men to maintain their authority and their power. They do everything that they accuse Diversity of Comics and Ethan of attempting to do through ComicsGate. That's what they're doing. This story is a weapon and it's a shield. Use it. Every time Mark Waid opens his mouth, shove this story down his throat, because he was part of it. He was cheering it on. And they constantly use the idea that they advocate for women in comics and gaming communities as their excuse for their self-righteous posturing and their abuse of other people. And yet this is what they did. This is the truth of their natures. The experience that I went through is the truth of Mark Waid and Joe Quesadilla, or what the fuck his name is, and the truth of the anti-gamer gators and the anti-comics gators. These people are going to go after you, and they're going to hang what they did to me on your neck. And you let the misery that I experience seep into your bones. And when they do that, no, you have no obligation to bend at knee and simper to them because of their fucked up accusations, which are exactly what they would do. All they're doing is confessing to their own crimes and making you responsible for them. So look at what happened to me. Look at the shit I went through. And remember that. Remember that it strips all of their self-righteousness, all of their pompous bullshit, all of their moral thuggery. It strips it all bare and lays it out for what it is. Don't let them hang their crimes on you. You owe them nothing. And that's why I told my story. So you can understand that you owe them nothing. And that everything out of their mouths is a hypocritical lie about their own behavior, their own attitudes, and their own willingness to destroy anyone who disagrees with them. They say that they advocate for women into comics. Bullshit! They do no such thing. They would remove every single woman in comics if she disagreed with them. That's something you would not do. I didn't hear anyone advocating for women being removed simply because they were feminist. I heard people saying they need to be able to do the job. These people don't have the life history to be able to write this stuff. The product that they're putting forth is so informed by their ideology, it's unreadable. That's different. That's judging them by their behavior. Not by their beliefs, by their behavior. And by the standard that they're expected to uphold as comics writers. That is legitimate. What isn't legitimate is what Mark Waid, Joe Quesadilla, and all of the others did to me. And right on cue, a week after I go on the stream, we already see the media trying to get their teeth even further into ComicsGate by accusations of ComicsGate wanting to get women out of comics. And they bring up the most inane examples. This individual who wrote Mockingbird received 7 sort of negative tweets. That's just mild criticism. Maybe pull back the ideology a bit. Don't shove it in people's face. Maybe work it into the characters, work it into the plots. Make whatever you want to say a part of the story. That's just a mild criticism that you're not doing it. And that maybe your lack of life experience leads you to be unable to do something like that. I'm looking at this, it's like, this is what they show? Any kind of criticism of any female feminist comic creator is now harassment. But they can do whatever the hell they like to any woman who disagrees with them. If I have to go through this misery, then I want it to be for something. And what I want it to be is so that you can take it and you can recognize what was done to me. And you can realize that they have no power over you. They have no moral authority over you. Use it as your shield every time they try to get you to kneel.
Kneel before Zod!
Because of some imagined sin, some projected sin, them projecting their sins onto you. That's why I told it. And as for selling a pitiable's tale, that's not why people support me. It's not why people have ever supported me. The reason why I have the support I do is that as low as I get, people know, the people who support me know, I will get back up again and take another swing. When this happened in 2015, I didn't go out there and say, hey guys, I have all these comics I haven't sold and all of these expenses that were caused by advocating for Gamergate and for men's rights. Could you give me some money just to cover my costs? What did I do? I said, give me the funds so I can get in the fucking ring. I asked for the ability to fight back, and you gave me the ability to fight back. There is a part of me, sort of an ungodly part of me, that isn't alive unless I'm in a fight. I'll admit to that. It's that whole pride thing. But your support made me effective in fighting back. And this is why they're going after Ethan. And why they're going after the other ComicsGaters who've gotten large amounts of money. In particular Ethan, because Ethan is also helping people do what he did. Which is great. I really appreciate it. That stream injected a lot of positivity into me. They are terrified of the support you are giving the ComicsGate creators. That's what scares them. Those huge, huge Indiegogo campaigns. The fact that people are stepping up and trusting independent comics creators more than the mainstream, more than the industry. That scares the shit out of them. And you know, the fact that you guys supported me in fighting back, that also scares the shit out of them. If they can get you to stop supporting me, then my effectiveness goes away. I no longer can even get into the ring to fight. So as long as you support me, holy shit, can I be a thorn in their side. In the side of not just the feminist media as represented by the Mary Sue, or feminist infiltrated institution like Calgary Expo, but now apparently I can also be a thorn in the side of the Canadian government. So here's a good reason to continue to support me. It pisses them off and it terrifies them. You are weaponizing me, and I am only so happy to be your weapon. So if you want to stick it to the Mary Sue, and you want to stick it to Calgary Expo, and all of these gatekeepers who have absolutely, they don't give a shit about women, and they don't give a shit about men. They don't give a shit about anything but what allows them to maintain their power over us. You want to stick it to them? I got a lawsuit. I got a lawsuit that they don't want funded. They don't want even to put any attention to it. Have you noticed the Mary Sue hasn't published any article crowing about their victory? Neither has the Calgary Expo. And in fact, there's another interesting thing. The Canadian court system is supposed to make their judgments public within 30 days. That judgment that was delivered to me is not public. They're hiding it because they are terrified that you will continue to support me and that I will continue to be able to fight. That's what scares them. All of this scares them. So, if you want me to continue to fight, www.feedthebadger.com. Don't let these people think they've won this round. Well, they have won this round. Don't let them think that they're going to win the next round by default. I mean, if they win it, I get in the fucking ring and I fight my ass off, and they win it because they've bribed the goddamn referee, so be it. But don't let them win by default because I couldn't even get in the ring. And Ethan, use my story as a weapon. All of you comics creators, remember it. Let it sink into your bones, the misery that I went through, the harrowing misery that I went through, that they have on the other side have no story to compare to. I mean, if they had it, if they had a story like mine, they might have a point. But they don't, and they don't have a point. So remember my story every time they cast aspersions on you morally. Remember it. Remember that you fight for people like me, women like me, and minorities like Brian. And if you want to help us get back in the ring to fight on for the lawsuit, again, www.feedthebadger.com. Every little bit helps. We are a day away from the end of the fundraiser and under $2,000 left. So please go put in $5, put in $50. It all gets us over the line. Every $5 is that last $5 who got it. That got us over the line. If you're interested in purchasing Xenospora, Romeo and Juliet meets War and Peace in Space, then go to www.feedthebadger.com and scroll down to the bottom where you can get your very own copy. Or you can hit the link, and I believe it's right here. Probably wrong. And finally, if you really enjoy our content here at Honey Badger Radio, not just on our main channel, Honey Badger Radio, but also on our Badger live streams, please do consider becoming a patron. I'm just going to lay it out to you guys. We need to have at least 7,250 an episode. That ends up being about $8,500 a month. We need that to be able to pay our bills each month. And if we don't get it, we have to look at restructuring, removing content, potentially pulling back some people's output, that kind of thing. So if you want to keep Honey Badger Radio in the state that it's in and creating the content that it does, please consider becoming a patron. www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And if you would prefer not to use Patreon, there are monthly options at feedthebadger.com as well. And I do hope you reach into your pockets and give us something to keep going, because I got some great content lined up for you in the immediate future. I'm going to be doing some more predictions. If you don't know, or you haven't been following me since my beginning on YouTube, I actually predicted Gamergate in 2005, not on YouTube, but on a forum called Stand Your Ground. And I predicted the events that have been occurring right now around the world with social justice warriors, feminists, and all of the various squabbling victim groups. In my YouTube playlist, Threat Narratives, which you can find on my channel under Typhon Blue, essentially I gave you a roadmap to the end of empire, and that's what we're seeing. And finally, we've predicted a lot of these infiltrations into groups: atheism, science fiction, gaming, comics, tabletop. I don't know if they're going to get metal yet, but they might try. The reason why we can do these kinds of predictions is because we don't ignore half the data. The men's issues half of the data. There's no magic, there's no voodoo to it. It's just the fact that we look at all of the data. Look forward to that. Consider becoming a patron to make sure we can create this great content for you. And have a good evening. Thank you for listening.